To appreciate the Easter liturgy or the Easter service, we cannot take what happens on Saturday night in isolation from the whole Paschal Triduum. It is seen as a whole, and if you really study the liturgy, you'll find that it begins with the Vigil celebration on Maundy Thursday, and it only ends with the Easter Vigil celebration. It is one long liturgy, and it's not three separate liturgies. And so, to begin, let me just mention a little bit about Maundy Thursday. As you know, Maundy Thursday is a kind of a hopeful celebration. It's the first time after a long season that we hear the Gloria, and during that time we see that Jesus is giving his body to a promise that he will be with his disciples throughout, that he will be forever with them. And it's sort of an adventure of hope, because everything has been going well for Jesus. People are believing in him. He has raised the dead in Lazarus, and so now the disciples have a very optimistic view of the future, that indeed Jesus is the Messiah and he's come now to save them. But this kind of takes a dark twist with Good Friday, when his glory is actually seen on the cross, and everything that has been built up and that they had hoped for is now dashed. They are really in a hopeless situation. They do not know how to make sense of it, of the suffering of Christ, what happens to them now, after. And yeah, so it takes a complete dip. And then we have the Easter Vigil celebration, where now Christ is risen. And suddenly, there's something to look forward to. They don't understand it. He had died, and yet he is alive. And there's this immense hope and joy that goes beyond what was experienced at Maundy Thursday. But how do we look at this in the context of our lives? You could say that the logic or the celebration of the Paschal Triduum is the logic of our lives, not something that we are used to. But we always start out our lives with a sense of adventure and a sense of hope. We look forward to the promise of what things can be with our dreams and aspirations. And somewhere along the line, as we are growing up and as we are living that adventure, it all seems to crash and burn. Life seems to be filled with so much suffering. We try to live our dreams, and we feel we end up failing. And that for us is like the cross. But then there is Easter Vigil, where there is that hope again. And for anyone who has been through a terrible crisis, we know that the down in our life is not the end. And somehow or other, we pick ourselves up. There's hope, and there's a life after a crisis. But for many of us, I think the Easter Vigil celebration is a kind of an awkward celebration. Because while we are proclaiming that Christ has risen, we do not always feel that in our lives. We still feel like we are in Good Friday. We have not resurrected from the difficulties and struggles that we are going through. And so, in some cultures, Good Friday is the peak of the celebration. They go for the Good Friday service. They resonate with Jesus' suffering on the cross, but it ends there. And so you find that sometimes there's a dip in terms of attendance at the Easter liturgy. Not many people come to the Easter liturgy as much as they do for Good Friday. And I think that's also sort of, it says something about how close we are, or how we identify with bad news and suffering, but we don't identify entirely with good news. And we do not know what to do with good news. And that's sort of what it's like with Easter Vigil. We can't identify with it entirely, because the culmination of our salvation is only at the end of our life. And we're still sort of in the midst of Good Friday, so to speak. But if we do not get out of that plane and only see our lives in terms of Good Friday, we've lost the message. And to hope and to see what is beyond that is very important. And so when we celebrate the Easter Vigil, it's really an act of faith And it's a good news that we don't understand yet. We can't completely comprehend. But that's the mystery of our faith in a sense, and we continue to live it, and we continue to see it in the little struggles that we get through, hoping for that one big culmination of our salvation that we see probably at the end of our life.